Hey, folks, I've got a really exciting topic today. You're here in my, I'm broadcasting from my Bond villain lair just now because we're going to be talking about James Bond. And I'm joined, of course, with my ever faithful. Put it this way, if I was savvy and good looking and charming enough to be Bond, Andrew would be my Q. But more accurately, I think he's my odd job to my Goldfinger.
Goldfinger.
Yeah. Yes. And of course, for those observant viewers and listeners, Neil seems to have turned into someone else. Now, we are joined with very special guest, self-confessed Bond fanatic, Daniel.
Hello,
Daniel.
Thank you for having me on.
Now, we're glad to have you on. We're glad to have on some fresh opinions, and we're really excited to hear what you have to say about James Bond, because James Bond is not only a staple of classic British cinema, but it's almost become like a cultural icon as well. You know, I mean, I think it's fair to say you go anywhere in the world, and then you ask people to think of British, what's iconic with British culture. And chances are, more often than not, people are going to say, oh, James Bond or 007 or something like that. So for something that's so ingrained in British culture, and it's also coming up for the 60th anniversary of Dr. No, is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, next year will be 60 years and 10 years of Skyfall as well. So, wow.
It's crazy. And you know, I'm going to start off today by asking our guest, Daniel. Put this question to you, Daniel. What do you think it is about the James Bond franchise that has made it last and endure over 60 years?
Wow, that is an insanely good question. And I feel like any answer is good enough, to be perfectly honest. But for me personally, it's just the sheer fact that they're all good fantasies in a way. I think it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. They appeal to something about you personally. I mean, when I was a kid watching Bond, one of the things that I loved about James Bond so much is that he doesn't really have a license to kill. It's more like he's completely free. He's the freest man in the world. He can do whatever he wants. He can indulge himself as much as he likes, and he only has to answer to one person, which is M. And even then, he can still do whatever he wants, and that is incredibly liberating. And I think that's where the fantasy element comes from. And I think they're all very much like that. They're just great entertainment, and they all deliver. There's not a boring film in that franchise to me. They've all got things in them that are worth watching. I mean, yeah, there's some good ones and bad ones, and maybe anything in between, but they always deliver. And I think that's why you can always expect a good time with Bond. And it doesn't matter who plays the role. There's always something about those movies that makes you want to come back and watch them.
Absolutely. You always know that going into a Bond film that you're always going to get a good espionage, like spy action type film, you know. And like you say, looking back on all the films in the franchise, was it 22, 23 films now, I think it is?
Oh, it's 25 now.
Right. Well, looking back on each one of them, I can honestly say, I think, I agree with your statement, Daniel. I think every single film has something to like, whether it's music or whether it's the plot or whether it's cars. You know, I'm a big...
Or even just the sets alone.
Oh, the sets, yeah.
Villains,
exactly. The actors in particular that are in the films. You know, so yeah, there's a lot to like. And going back to, obviously I made a reference to the whole British thing as well. You know, the opening of The Spy Who Loved Me, when he parachutes, remember when he parachutes, he parachutes off of he's skiing down a cliff. he goes over the edge of the cliff. His parachute opens, and it's the Union Jack flag.
Yeah.
And I have heard in like documentaries and interviews that the audience like erupted cheering, and so
Of course.
that might have just been like a pro British sentiment because
Because what I love
Britain,
about that
yeah.
moment, you do think he's almost not going to make it. That you think, oh, this is just he's going to die or something, and then all of a sudden, the big joke, he's fine.
Yeah.
He's going to make it.
Yeah, and
I mean, it'd be pretty brave to kill off James Bond in the pre-title sequence of his film. That would be brave.
Oh, in Skyfall, they pretty much almost did it. They almost had
That's
the thing.
true.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too political as well, but obviously those films were coming out during the Cold War as well, and
Yeah.
that would have given audiences a lot of like, I'm sure audiences back then would have been thinking, yeah, like, oh, East, the Iron Curtain, communism's bad, blah 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 blah. But it's interesting to think that James Bond as a franchise has survived beyond the Cold War, and it's survived beyond a lot of that old attitudes back then and things like that. So do you think, Andrew, I'll put this question to you. Do you
Okay.
think that James Bond as a franchise and James Bond as a character has adapted well to the current climate and the current times that we live in? Because I think that with cybercrime and hacking and the internet and unfortunately terrorism and things like that, I think that James Bond has adapted its storylines well to modern times. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree, especially the Pierce Brosnan and the Daniel Craig films. I think that's kind of the crux of the Daniel Craig films, is that how can Bond work in today's worlds? And for the most part, I think, yeah, I mean, for me personally, when it comes to these sort of things, all I just want is a big Bond adventure. I'm not really that bothered about can Bonds live in today's world. Like, yeah, just as long as they're entertaining, then sure. But to answer your question, I guess that's one of the many reasons why I love Skyfall, is the fact that they do tie in these, and to a lesser extent Spectre, they do tie into these today's happenings in today's world into his films.
You mentioned Skyfall there. There's that funny scene in it when James Bond gets in Aston Martin DB5, and then M says, "Oh, it's not very comfortable, is it?" Something like that. So there is a lot.
And then Bond threatens to eject her.
Yeah. So I do like some of the references to that sort of thing. Like the differences in attitudes and just modern times versus back then, and obviously the Sean Connery era is very different from the Daniel Craig era. But no. So controversial question. Let's just get out of the way. This is going to be contentious.
All right.
Which Bond does it best? Which actor does it best?
Who does it better?
Daniel, do you want to go first?
Well, gosh, again, it goes by. There's so much variety in Bond. It's like it's almost impossible to say, because every actor that's played Bond has brought something unique to the table that defines their era. But for me personally, right now, when I rewatched all of the Bond films the past couple of years, ones that I hadn't ever seen before, to me, Daniel Craig is the definitive Bond for me right now. I think he's the best actor to have ever played Bond. I think they tailored the script and the story and everything to Casino Royale. To me, is like, yeah, he is James Bond to me, because he's a character, he's a human being, and that's why I liked him so much. But Connery is iconic. Roger Moore can deliver a one-liner like no one else. Dalton was the weird one, where it was a bridge between the old and the slightly newer. And then, my God, I love Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. I think he's terrific. But I only love one Windows film, that's Goldeneye. I do kind of like Tomorrow Never Dies, but I always feel like he was the Bond that they didn't know what to do with him. He's a bit like every other Bond in one, and that's kind of why I've always found to be a bit dull. It's nothing against him personally. I felt like if they had gone more Craig's era or something, he would have had more of an impact, which is unfair, because I think really, like, a lot of his films suffer from really good ideas but not capitalizing them enough, personally, for me.
I think Daniel Craig's Bond showed it excelled in showing Bond's vulnerability, and like you
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
it does humanize him a lot more than Connery's Bond. I couldn't imagine Connery's Bond really showing any of his weaknesses or vulnerabilities. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like that scene when Daniel Craig in Casino Royale gets in the shower and sits down beside Eva Green's character.
I was the way to say that, yeah.
That was the most. I thought that was the most like human. If it's even, I know it sounds silly, but the most human moment in that film is when just after that moment when they were fighting in the stairwell, I believe. You've had that violence, and then you have that softer, quieter, calmer moment.
Yeah. Because it's a love scene without any physical love in it, which is very not like the Bond films at all, really, up until that point.
Plus, also crucially, he's showing empathy as well. I mean, he understands that Eva Green's character has just been through this traumatic experience, whereas I can't really, cast my mind back to Sean Connery era. I can't really imagine Connery showing much empathy at all, really. I mean, I think that some of those older Bonds in particular haven't aged very well. In terms of things like that.
Aspects, yeah.
Certain aspects like that haven't aged very well, and also, Diamonds Are Forever. The less said about that film, the better.
Yes, absolutely.
But I agree with a point that Andrew made on the previous episode, was about this shifts in tone that don't make sense. It's consistency, because like Andrew pointed out, and I'll let Andrew elaborate on this in a minute, that at the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, you've also got that touching moment where Bond, who's just been married, his wife has just been gunned down, he's heartbroken. Yeah, he's heartbroken, he's devastated. And then all of a sudden, at the start of Diamonds Are Forever, he's hung up on that for about 5 minutes, and he moves on.
Very quickly.
Yeah. So Andrew, do you want to elaborate on that? I mean, I agree with your point.
I mean, you pretty much summed it up. It was just that really weird when I was watching the DVDs for the first time. It's like, oh my god, I can't wait to follow up on American Secret Service. Oh, like the pre-title sequence, and then it was just your James Bond adventure. So I guess in some respects that's why with Daniel Craig era, at least they try to tie them up a little bit more. Like Quantum of Solace is, I think, the only straight up sequel to the Bond film. And then Spectre will try a bit too hard to tie them all up, I think.
That's one thing that I appreciated the most about the Daniel Craig era, was the consistency and the continuity of them, trying to make them feel as though they're all fairly connected, But going back to the question that I put to Daniel originally about the best Bond, who does it best, I agree with you. They all take something, they all add something to the franchise. But perhaps quite controversially, and it might be contentious, but my favorite Bond is Timothy Dalton. And that's quite rare for people to choose Dalton as their favorite Bond, because often they think that he's quite what's the word? What would you say? Drab, like somber. Yeah, almost like he's very dour. Quite serious all the time. There's not much humor, but I can't help but think that if Bond, this government assassin / spy / agent, would be like that, I think that I think Timothy Dalton's take on Bond is the most realistic, in my opinion.
I'd agree. His version, he was really adamant in interviews and in the making of documentaries that he really wanted to go back to the source material. He wanted to go back to Fleming. And actually, I remember a couple of months ago doing a bit of research on Dalton's Bond. I came across an old interview with Sean Connery, and he said that he thought it was a mistake to get a Shakespearean actor to play Bond, because Bond's more of a physical role. It's not something it's not something you overanalyze or kind of add a whole lot of depth to it because, to be perfectly honest, Bond up until a certain point to me was always a very one-dimensional character. I mean, on the page, like if you look at the scripts for the early ones, you don't really know much about Bond. There's not much backstory. There's not much depth to him. It's all about just like Connery, Moore, and Lazenby. They had to make the character work. It was all about the way they moved, the way they looked. It was not something. It was not an intellectual role. Like there's not a moment in Connery's Bond's era or Moore's era where they had a really great scene to play that had a lot of emotion or depth. Whereas like in Our Majestic Service, there's plenty of moments for that because Bond has an arc. He changes over that course of that film. He falls in love, he opens up, he shows his more vulnerable side, he becomes human, and then unfortunately he suffers the consequences of that, which turns him back into what he became, but probably even worse. But yeah, it's Dalton's wonderful. Although my dad really hates Dalton's Bond because how serious he is.
Yeah.
But it's unfair. It's unfair for Dalton because I wish he had more films.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I think,
Yeah.
sorry to cut in, Daniel, but I think he
that's fine.
actually he auditioned for one of the earlier ones, but I think that they said he was too young at the time. And then,
Yeah, I think because Roger Moore was at the stage of he was just getting a bit too old for it.
Yeah.
So I think round about Octopussy, they
Yeah.
thought, okay, well, let's see, Timothy Dalton is free.
And funnily
But
enough, some of the other actors, one of the other big name actors that auditioned for Bond that never got it was Sam Neill. I don't know if you know that, but
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
I've actually,
James Brolin too. You can see his screen test on YouTube. It's quite weird.
Yeah, Adam West was offered Automatic Secret Service,
Yeah.
but he said,
Oh,
nah, Bond has to be played by a British actor.
yeah.
yeah.
But no, that's the reason I would say I like Timothy Dalton. I appreciate how realistic and how committed he was to portraying the character as he is in the book. And I have heard many people who are familiar and they've read the books. They've often said that his interpretation is the most accurate to how it is in the books. And I would actually say Living Daylights in particular is one of my favorite Bond films.
It's very underrated.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think both of his films are underrated. I
Oh,
actually really
definitely
like
for sure.
Well,
License to Kill.
License to Kill in particular gets, I feel, a lot of flack because people often say, "Oh, it's too violent," and it's often cited as the only Bond that's a 15. And some of the influences might have been at the time, like Scarface and Miami Vice and things like that. With the whole
Yeah.
drug thing in Florida and Cuba, and
A lot of revenge films too. It's a big thing in the theme of the film is revenge and
yeah. And there's
Yeah,
not.
the shark bit was
oh, that's brutal. Yeah.
It's not even the shark bit that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the bit when Benicio del Toro, a very young Benicio del Toro, goes through the cocaine shredder.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Even when I was watching that film as a kid, without my parents' knowledge, I was watching it, and that scene was quite graphic. I thought, even for a Bond film, and the way Timothy Dalton so callously dispatches of some of them, like he shows no mercy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Especially when he discovers Felix Leiter back in his house.
yeah,
And then there's another moment where Benicio del Toro is about to torture Felix Leiter, and Felix is just like, "What have you done with my wife?" And he's like, "Don't worry, we've sent her a nice honeymoon." And it's like, "Oh God, what have you done to this poor woman that deserved absolutely nothing?"
it is a very dark film. There's not a lot of laughs to be had, but
Oh no.
it's almost like you're talking about the theme of revenge, and obviously revenge you would think would go against this agent's mandate as like going out on missions. You would think that he would have to act impartially, but revenge as a theme is key to License to Kill because there's, let's not forget in License to Kill, Bond even gets his License to Kill revoked. So he even goes against M and he just goes on his personal vendetta to get revenge. And then at the end, he sets Sanchez on fire ruthlessly.
I like it was with Felix, the lighter that he gave him. That I thought was a really nice touch.
Yeah, exactly. I would say overall, my personal favorite Bond film is GoldenEye,
Same.
because I think that, oh, and interestingly enough, for those who don't know, viewers, listeners, GoldenEye was actually directed by the same guy who directed Casino Royale, which Casino Royale and GoldenEye are two of my favorite Bond films. So, yeah, GoldenEye. Let's talk about GoldenEye for a minute.
I love that film.
Sean
Yeah.
Bean, Femke Jensen, and Pierce
Alan
Brosnan.
Cumming.
Oh, and yes, of course. Oh, and
I'm invincible.
and let's not forget Robbie Coltrane as well.
Oh yeah, legend. That is Robbie Coltrane.
Yes. So GoldenEye, I thought was fantastic, and
And the first movie with Judi Dench as M, who
Oh,
would go
absolutely.
on to play her. Well, would go on to play M even in the Daniel Craig reboot films.
yeah, up until Skyfall. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she made that role her own, and obviously we had a
Yeah.
Moneypenny recasting, and Hugh was still played by the original actor up until
until the world is not enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then John Cleese took over for Die Another Day.
Yeah. I love GoldenEye because I love the opening sequence. You know, and how far-fetched it is when Bond drives his motorcycle off of the cliff and skydives and gets into the plane and then manages to pull up. I just appreciate that. And also, I like the whole revenge kind of plot from Sean Bean's. He's 005, is it? Yeah, 00,
Yeah.
I think
6.
006, yeah, Alec Trevelyan. Yeah, just a great film. Great film. And a good comeback for Bond, I thought, as well, because at that point, I think there had been 6-7 years gap in between License to Kill and GoldenEye.
Yeah, I think so.
I think they had a massive problem with rights, which has plagued the franchise from almost the very beginning.
Yeah.
The whole, I think it was Ian Fleming and Thunderball. They had huge right problems with it, and every so often it keeps coming back. Because I think in the Craig era there was problems with the rights again.
Yeah, I
wasn't it?
think so. Like that's why the gap between Quantum of Solace and Skyfall was quite big.
Yes, that's right. Now I remember. Yeah.
Notoriously as well, there was a big issue in the early 80s as well with the rights, because I think it was MGM and I can't remember if Cubby Broccoli was still going about at that time.
His last producing credit was on GoldenEye, I believe.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
it was in the run up to Octopussy's release, I believe. That was when Never Say Never Again was made, and Never Say Never Again, obviously a remake of Thunderball, and you know that year they were out, I think it was 1983 or 1984. They were competing, and you know the big marketing and the big promotional thing for Never Say Never Again is, oh, we've got Sean Connery, the real Bond, he's back, even though he's getting on a bit now, he's back.
Yeah, and it was competing against Moonraker, wasn't it?
No, it was Octopussy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And also Octopussy, it's not the best Roger Moore film, but it's got its moments.
I'd rather watch Octopussy than Never Say Never Again, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never want to watch that movie again.
No.
Yes, Never Say Never Again, never watch again, you mean?
But to me, I don't know how you both feel about it, but to me, that's even though it's not officially part of the franchise, to me, that's the worst Bond film. If it didn't have Sean Connery in it, it would have like nothing.
I guess because it's not an official Bond film, it's the easy answer, if that makes sense.
It is.
It's just like watching it is a weird experience because you're like, well, this is just trying so hard to imitate Bond. I mean, it's got none of the music.
Yeah.
It looks really cheap, and Sean Connery looks super old. Basically Sean Connery looks like Roger Moore's dad in that film.
And it's weird to think that was only like 4 or 5 years before The Last Crusade as well, to think how much Connery seemed to have aged in that time. But
it's the beard. That's it.
Yeah,
the beard.
For the Lord of the Rings fans, it's the beards. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, I agree with you. Never Say Never Again is often Well, I think that's such an easy answer for what's the worst Bond. I could flat out right now say the worst Bond, in my opinion, is the Quantum of Solace. It's just
You're not wrong.
I just don't like it. And as we said in the last episode, that could be down to the writer's strike.
Yeah, the writer's strike, the fact they had to make up as they went along, and also I felt that Bond was trying to imitate Jason Bourne, which was really popular back then.
Ooh, yes, yes.
And
Good point.
it was more like a Jason Bourne movie than a James Bond movie.
That's a good point, Andrew. And that's something that I actually forgot about, on last week's episode. I was going to mention that as well for the sequels. I was going to touch upon the Jason Bourne films. And you're right. I think in that time period, sort of late 2000s, there was a time where the Jason Bourne films and, Bond were competing. You go back to the late 2000s, as I say. I think Bourne Ultimatum was just about to be released, and just alongside that release window, Quantum of Solace was coming up for release as well. And there's scenes in those two films that you compare them side by side, they're almost carbon copies of each other. I mean, two scenes in particular. It's like there's a scene where Bond and Bourne are chasing people through either over rooftops or through these rooms and jump from one building to the next. And they're so close and they're so similar into how they're shot, the style in which they're shot, and also the fight scenes as well. Because obviously Bourne had always been going for those gritty, fast, very sort of
shaky cam.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, in Bourne Supremacy and Bourne Ultimatum, there was the fight scenes to me made an impact because there was no like soundtrack. There was a very lack of like ambient sounds. Like, there's a scene in the second one where there's this. The phone starts ringing, and it's literally just the phone ringing over the fight scene, and that builds the tension. But anyway, sorry, going back to Quantum of Solace, yeah, it almost seemed as if it was trying to copy the Bourne films, and then Skyfall brought it back, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And just quickly, my favorite scene in Quantum of Solace is Tosca, the opera scene. I think that's really,
that's a good scene, yeah.
That's quite good as well. And of course, there's a throwback to, I think it's Moonraker, where the guy's got Bond's tie and then he hits his hand off of it and then he falls off the roof. I think that happened in Moonraker as well as Quantum of Solace. But anyway, I've spoken enough. I'm sure I could have
speak too much.
I'm sure I could have tortured Bond by just speaking too much. But Andrew, I'm going to throw it to you. Which actor does Bond best?
Oh, doesn't best. Well, you know the expression, you never forget your firsts. So Sean Connery was my first James Bond. So he's almost like Basil Rathbone, Sherlock Holmes. Because they were the first ones that I watched, they were my introduction to this world. They're automatically the first ones that I think of when I think of these characters, Bond and Sherlock Holmes, and so on and so forth with other iconic characters. Goldfinger was my first Bond film because we only really owned Goldfinger, Thunderball, and You Only Live Twice. And my family are kind of fussy when it comes to Bond films. They, for the most part, they only really like the Sean Connery films. So yeah, like he's the iconic one. He's the first one that I come to, but I like them all in their own different ways. But the ones I think Daniel Craig and Timothy Dalton, as we said, they're the ones that really went to the source material and brought that to life and tried to make something a little bit different to what we've seen before.
I think that's a good point you make about whatever you're exposed to first, it's hard to shake that, because in particular with film and TV, if you see an actor portraying a character, that initial impression will be left with you, and it'll be hard to replace that. If that, the clear example that jumps to my mind of that is Richard Harris as Dumbledore compared to Michael Gambon. I seen Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in the cinema, and obviously Richard Harris, before he passed, was Dumbledore, and his viewer is going to be getting their pitchforks and their torches ready for me. But I've only ever seen the first three Harry Potter films. So I think Michael Gambon replaced Richard Harris in the third one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Azkaban. Yeah.
Yeah, but for me personally, I can only think of Dumbledore as Richard Harris, whereas I was having the same conversation with a friend of mine recently, and they were the complete opposite. They only thought of Dumbledore as Michael Gambon. So I think you're right that whatever Bond film you've seen first, it's probably that actor, and in your case, Connery, that'll be Bond for you. Daniel, when were you first exposed to the Bond films?
Oh, I've got so many wonderful memories of seeing Bond. I mean, my first ever Bond in the cinema was Die Another Day. My dad took me to see that. Just because my dad is a big cinema lover as much as I am, and he introduced me to so many movies as a young kid. But I think my earliest memory of seeing a Bond film was it was a school night, and it seems like when I was a kid, like there was always like some kind of Bond film on, like on a weekend or something. But I remember specifically, I had to do a whole bunch of homework for the next day, and my mom wouldn't allow me to watch TV until it was done. But I convinced her that a Bond film was coming on. It was Goldfinger, so she allowed me to watch Goldfinger, and then I would do my homework. But I never did my homework because it was all too late. I had to go to bed. So the next day, I got into huge trouble from my teachers, and I couldn't use any excuse. Well, I was just watching TV.
It seems like a good trade-off to me. Seems worth it.
Yes.
And then, like me and my grandma actually would watch Bond films together. I used to stay at hers a lot during the weekend. So my dad hired a whole bunch of videotapes from Blockbuster, and then we would just watch them. That's how I watched Goldeneye for the first time. Me and my grandma just watched it. She would make fun of me because I would always go, oh, like Bond's kissing someone yet again. Get to the action. And then she'd get all bored during the action scenes, and that's when I started to get a bit more excited. Like, oh yes, guns and explosions and a giant tank coming out a wall, and that's great.
Yeah, and you're pulling my heartstrings a wee bit because that's why I love film and TV, and that's why I love cinema as much as I do, because of the memories that it conjures up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost every film. And a lot of these franchises that we often discuss in the show, that as soon as I think of them, I'm transported back to my childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly in the case of Bond and Star Wars, maybe not like the Alien franchise or things like that, but certainly with the likes of James Bond and things like that, a lot of these films I seen when I was young, and like a lot of the viewers and listeners at home, they will associate a lot of films and TV, I'm sure, in their first time viewing them, with memories and cherish them and things like that. So that's why I remember, like yourself, Daniel, the first Bond film that I seen in the cinema was Die Another Day as well.
Oh yeah.
2002, I think it was.
Yeah, it was very, very early on in the 2000s.
Yeah. And I also went to see that with my mom and dad and my brother. And I remember at the time, like seeing on, for anyone, for everyone in the UK will remember GMTV and things like that. I remember watching, interviews with the cast, like Pierce Brosnan and Halle Berry. What's the actress's name again?
Rosamund Pike.
Rosamund Pike. Yeah, sorry, forgive me. Rosamund.
Well, that was her first ever film, wasn't it?
Was it?
I think so.
Or was it the first big film she did? Maybe she was in like smaller roles. I don't know.
Probably, yeah. Bear with me. I'm gonna fact check this
just now,
so I don't look like a twat.
I'm sure you won't, Andrew. No, it might have been. I agree with Daniel. Very likely, it's probably the first big film role. I mean, she must have had roles before that.
Yeah.
She appeared at television, so her film debut was Die Another Day.
Oh, okay, that is actually really interesting.
Yeah,
I stand corrected.
Because a lot of actresses, they got hella typecast for if Bond was their first major role in anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I just remember the buzz around the film back then. It
So I
wasn't.
was late. I'm the latest out of you guys because the first Bond film I saw in the cinema was Skyfall.
Oh wow.
So
That
yeah.
that is an
Oh
impressive
my
one.
God. Oh my goodness. I can't take any more of this, Andrew.
I'm sorry.
You're killing me.
Well, I mean, I wanted Quantum of Solace to be the first one, but maybe
Well, you certainly
maybe for
looked
the
at
Oh,
best.
there.
you dodged a bullet with that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you'll forgive the pun. Ha ha ha.
Yeah,
Hit by the gun barrel.
Skyfall. Skyfall's a good one to have as my first Bond
Yeah.
cinema experience.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
that film so much.
you know, Skyfall is a good film to that would be a good entry into the franchise. Was that the first Bond film you've seen in general, or was that the first cinema?
In the cinema.
Bond?
So the
All right.
first, as I said, the first Bond film I saw was Goldfinger. And
Oh.
then after that, so Goldfinger, Thunderball, and You'll Live Twice. And then I went back and watched them all in order.
To be honest, I think Bond is one of those franchises that you don't necessarily have to watch it in order because it's each film is self-contained. With apart from a few loose connections here and there, you can almost your entry point can be any one of the films. You don't necessarily have to watch them in order, I don't think, apart from maybe the Daniel Craig ones. But
even still, I would say Skyfall. You could watch that as your first ever Bond film.
Yeah. I've got a question. So when both of you first started watching the Bond franchise, so if you ever stumbled upon one, did you ever find it bizarre that someone new was playing James Bond? Like if you watch Sean Connery and then all of a sudden there's these ones with a different actor. Did you find that bizarre, or did you kind of?
I mean, you're asking this to a Doctor Who fan, so who's kind of used to having different actors play the role. So it didn't really bother me. If anything,
Bond,
I was like,
I think Bond's regeneration sequence happened whenever he got in his Aston Martin, and whenever he stepped out, it was a new actor. No, sorry, Andrew. That's a silly joke. Go ahead.
No, I'm not gonna lie. I think I remember years and years ago, someone edited like, "What if James Bond was a Time Lord?" and they like took scenes from the films and did the regeneration glowing. So like every time when Sean Connery got shot, he would regenerate into George Lazenby.
That's good.
How fun if it would be if the people spliced Back to the Future with Bond as well. Instead of Mark McFly, it's like Roger Moore just stepping into the DeLorean, taking off.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
But yeah, no, it's for me, it was just a case of okay, a new actor was playing Bonds. Cool.
I remember coming to the realization when I was younger that Indiana Jones Sr. was the same actor as James Bond. Because I know it sounds silly, and it is silly, but up until when I was a kid, like when you're young, you don't really make that connection, because a film's a film. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's the same actor as James Bond. That's cool. No, but anyway, back to your original question, Daniel. I remember just realizing early on that it was the same character. I remember thinking it was strange that they were played by different people, but I never really it never really bothered me, to be honest with you. I remember thinking that the Connery Bond films were really like old-fashioned looking. Not that ever bothered me, but I just remember thinking, wow, they look so old compared to the Roger Moore ones, or compared to the Timothy Dalton ones, which makes sense, obviously, because they were made in different time periods. But no, I remember specifically liking You Only Live Twice out of all of Connery's films, just because I liked Donald. Well, not that I knew the actor's name at the time, but I liked Donald Pleasance Blofeld. I thought he was quite menacing.
That volcano set is still absolutely incredible looking. It's just astonishing.
And to think that Donald Pleasance wasn't the first actor to play Blofeld, there was actually someone already cast for You Only Live Twice.
Yeah, I think
the producers didn't like him.
Yeah, you can see like photos of it online. They were filming with him on set.
Wow.
Yeah, but they said he seemed more like an evil Santa Claus than a Bond villain, so they
Bond.
fired him.
Glad they went with Donald Pleasance because quite an underrated actor, in my opinion.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
but I remember thinking it's weird that actors seem to pop up in different Bond films as different characters. I'm pretty sure there's one of the Bond girls that's in two films, and that's the actress that was in The Man with the
Oh,
Golden Gun. She
is that
pops.
Maud Adam? No, not
Yeah,
Maud.
Yes,
Maud
yeah,
Adams.
and
Yeah,
he was an Octopussy.
she was in
Yes,
Octopussy,
that's right. Yeah.
and she was in The Man with the Golden Gun as well, I think. Uh, and also, you've got the guy in You Only Live Twice, Mr. Henderson, I think his name is. He gets stabbed through the paper wall, and then he turns up as
Oh,
Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever.
yeah.
Yes, that's
I,
right. Yeah.
I thought that was bizarre. And also, you've got I can't remember the actor's name, but he plays uh, sort of the CIA handler to Bond in Pierce Brosnan films, but he plays a baddie in Living Daylights. Remember the American guy in Bond fights him at the end of the film.
Oh, yeah. I know who you mean, Craig, but I can't.
Joe Don Baker, that's the one. Yeah, he was in The Living Daylights as a baddie, and then he turns up as sort of the CIA handler, Felix Leiter character in Pierce Brosnan films. So yeah, I did think it was quite strange that certain actors popped up in different films as different characters. Uh, what did you think of sort of what they done with Q's character in the Daniel Craig era? Because I don't even know if there is a Q. There's not really a Q in Casino Royale, is it?
No, he joins in Skyfall. So Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, they wanted to take a break because I think they felt that Die Another Day went a bit too over the top with the gadgets.
Yeah.
So they wanted to take a break from that corner of the Bond universe, make the gadgets in Casino Royale something that you could actually have in real life rather than an invisible car. But they introduced him in Skyfall, played by Ben Whishaw.
Mhm. What do you think of that casting?
Yeah, I like him. He's different to the originals. But I guess the younger and a little bit more naive agents compared to Bond, a bit more seasoned, was it was a fun dynamic compared to the originals. It was more like Q is just tired of Bond's crap every
Mm.
time.
Yeah,
So they shook up the dynamic, which I liked.
I liked Ralph Fiennes' or Ray Fiennes. I liked his casting as M.
See, when you cast Ray Fiennes, you think because of Harry Potter and Voldemort, that he's so iconic as Voldemort, you think, oh, he's gonna be the baddie, isn't he?
Mm.
But when, because let's face it, everyone thought that he was going to be Blofeld in Skyfall. I remember as soon as he was cast, everyone was on the internet like, oh, he's Blofeld, he's Blofeld. So when it turned out that he was the new M, well, staring at us right in the face, Mallory, yeah, great casting as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I've got some quick fire questions for you both. Now, there's quite a few to go through, so I just want just an answer, and then it doesn't require any explanation because I'm sure those of the viewers and listeners, they'll be Bond fans as well, hopefully, and they'll hopefully understand your choices. So quickly, and I'll jump between you both.
Okay.
Best Bond villain, Andrew.
Oh, it's Sean Bean in GoldenEye.
Nice. Daniel?
Red Grant from Rush with Love. I can't get enough of that character. I just love how he's a physical match for Bond. That's personally my favorite villain.
It's a good choice.
Nice.
For me personally, just because he's so crazy and he's a maniac, Christopher Walken from A View to a Kill. Zorin.
Nice.
I know he
A very
plays.
entertaining watch, Christopher Walken in
Yeah.
Bond.
Christopher Walken is just entertaining in general, though.
Yeah.
He chews up the
He's
scenery.
got the most blondest hair in that film. I always remember he's just got this crazy blonde hair.
He chews up the scenery in that film, and he's definitely like he plays it very big. But I love his performance in that film. Okay, so favorite Bond song. Daniel, sorry.
You know what? I'll go for Surrender from the ending credits of Tomorrow Never Dies. That's a really underrated one. I'm gonna go for that
Okay,
one.
all right, going niche, are we?
Wow, that's
Okay.
Because that was originally meant to be the opening to the film, but they changed it to the ending credits, which
Oh,
is
really?
weird. Because it's
Can
a
you
better song in my opinion.
can you remember who performed it?
Oh gosh, I can't. It's K or something
Because
beginning with
I think
K. Something.
It was Cheryl who done the song for
Sheryl Crow for
Yeah,
Sheryl
Cheryl
Crow.
Crow, I
Guys.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the one that they went with. It's not bad. I just prefer the one at the ending credits. It would have been has more of a Shirley Bassey type of feel,
Mm,
more of a John Barry score to it,
mhm,
feeling to it.
mhm. Andrew?
Either GoldenEye or The Spy Who Loved Me. But The
Nice.
Living Daylights is a tune.
Yeah, yeah. Living Daylights.
Oh,
Well, Living Daylights is mine, but because Daniel went niche, I'm going to go niche as well.
Okay.
I also like the song by it's a song by the Pretenders that plays in Living Daylights. It's a song that oh, what's the character's name again? Uh, the bad guy listens to on his headphones when he's strangling people. Where has everybody gone by the Pretenders? That's pretty good.
Okay.
So that's
that's too niche, Craig. That's
Right.
too
Well,
niche.
if you guys are going niche, I'll go with the theme of the Quantum of Solace video game because it's not Die Another. No, it's not Another Way to Die. Because when they were making the game, as we said, it was during the writer's strike, so they had no idea what the plot of Quantum of Solace was, so they just had to make it up.
wow.
Half of it's actually a game of Casino Royale, and there's a different theme as well, and arguably a much better one.
I actually think I remember playing that game. Okay, fair enough. That's as niche as it gets. Fair enough. This might be difficult for those of you who aren't like into cars or anything, but favorite Bond vehicle?
Hmm.
uh, I'm gonna go with the
It could be
submarine car in Spy Who Loved Me.
okay.
Oh, damn it.
That's a good choice. That's a good choice. Yeah, fair enough.
Little Nelly from
Oh,
Hollywood
Yeah.
Twice.
Daniel just stole
Little
mine.
helicopter.
Yeah,
That,
Daniel
I'll
just.
go for that.
Daniel,
Daniel.
remember we saw Little Nelly in the London James Bond
Did
Museum
yeah, it was
and
pretty
the
awesome.
submarine car. Oh,
Yeah.
that was so cool.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I should have bought a fish and just dropped it by this car and just walked away.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I was going to say that as well. Um, I think for me personally, it's probably one of the more modern cars that he drives. You know, I think he drives quite a nice BMW and GoldenEye. I think it's green.
I'm shocked that no one's picked the Aston Martin. That should be
Well, that's the
I guess
classic,
that's
isn't it?
that's the obvious one. So we're kind of
Yeah.
trying to make it a little bit different.
That's the obvious one. Um, fair enough. No, some good choices there, guys. Just very good choices.
What about favorite Bond girl and favorite Bond henchman?
Craig?
Well, I'll go with Henchman. Probably, I've always appreciated, though I don't really like the film, I've always appreciated Stamper from Tomorrow Never Dies. It would probably be, I think his name is Necros, who's the guy that listens to the song on the headphones from the Living Daylights, who strangles everybody. I think he's quite cool as well. And I know I'm cheating by picking more than two, but I would probably say as well Odd Job, just because he's cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna say henchman Jaws and Bond girl at Eva Green in Casino Royale. I think she and Daniel Craig have the best chemistry between a Bond and a leading lady in all the films.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I really love Diana Rigg in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I
Yeah,
think
that's
she's
another good choice.
wonderful in that.
Yeah.
She's so good that she managed to get a performance out of George Lazenby, which is a humongous achievement. And for henchman, I'll go for Knick Knack from the one with the golden gun,
You
just
mean
because he's just
Minnie?
a good laugh.
There you go niche again. I like it, Daniel.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, Andrew stole Jaws, which is
Well, I'm sorry. Okay.
Wow, Jaws. Yeah, but I can't believe I forgot about Jaws. Yeah, I just take back everything I said. Jaws is easily
Yeah.
the coolest, and also he redeems himself.
He does. He
He
falls in love.
does.
Um, and he kills. Well, he doesn't kill, but he helps. He helps James Bond take down the spaceship thing, does he? In
Mhm.
Moonraker.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, I always question, like, how on earth did he survive the Spy Who Loved Me? Like, he's in the middle of the ocean. How can he live? How did he
Because
get
he's
out of this?
Jaws.
You know what? He just turned into a shark, and then
Yes.
Steven Spielberg made a film about Jaws, which was Jaws, and then turned back into a human being, and that's what happened. Totally true.
yeah, that's well, it could be likely. Yes. Because it would have been funny if in Jaws he opened the shark opened its jaws and it had metal teeth. That would have been a good crossover.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Um, but what do you guys think of this? And this is something that I was discussing with a friend of mine recently. A lot of the Bond films, depending on when they come out, they tend to try to go for or market on what's popular at the time, different trends. I mean, you've got Man with the Golden Gun. It was released early 70s, and that was released same time period as Enter the Dragon. And there's a lot of people that say that took inspirations from that. And then you got Moonraker, released just after Star Wars.
Casino Royale and Batman Begins.
Yeah,
Casino
and-
Royale
Yeah,
before the
yeah.
the reboot that
Great
Batman
reboot.
Begins. Yeah.
And then you've got Live and Let Die, which obviously came out around the same sort of time as like Shaft and things like that. So do you think there's been anything any Bonds recently that have tried to sort of do something similar? Or would you say that Quantum of Solace, obviously going back to the talking about the Bourne films and things like that, do you think that's the most recent example of Bond?
Well, The Dark Knight was a huge influence on Skyfall. So yeah, there's that. There was also it was heavily rumored that Spectre and the film that would become No Time to Die would be like the two-part finale, which was the trend in Hollywood a couple of years ago. Obviously, that never happened, but that was a big rumor as well. I guess just it's that's how Bond can kind of stay relevant and reinvent itself, is by seeing, okay, what's popular and see if we can make a James Bond twist on it.
Yeah, I mean, it comes full circle to what we said at the beginning, about Bond remaining relevant and whether Bond as a character is still relevant in this day and age that we live in. So yeah, I do believe it is important for the producers and for the writers to think about, well, what's current and how can we adapt Bond to what's current.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of good ground. Tell me, guys, Andrew, I know you said that you're going to see the long-awaited follow-up to, well, I don't know if it's a follow-up, but the long-awaited No Time to Die, which is obviously
very long-awaited. Craig,
been...
we graduated college when Spectre came out.
Yeah, I mean, it's been delayed and delayed and delayed, and finally, there's no escaping it. It's here. It's being released in UK cinemas. I believe
I actually have booked my ticket. It's like, oh my goodness, it feels like a fever dream that's actually here.
It's finally here. The media buzz is enormous. It's all over the TV. The Royals, I think the premiere was last night, I believe, and the Royals were along to see it, Kate and William. So it's Bond mania just now. Obviously, we're all going to go and see it. Tell me, guys, are your expectations high?
Well, I'm trying to not get myself too hyped. I mean, if I'm honest, if it came out when it was originally coming out in April last year, that was when I was really in my Bond mood. So that's when I was like, oh yeah, give it to me now. Whereas just now, it's like I'm hyped, I'm really excited, but it's just not set in that I'm away to see it because it's been delayed for so long. So yeah, I'm just as I'm hoping for just a great film and a great fitting end for the Daniel Craig era. That's all I'm hoping for right now.
Daniel?
Well, much like Andrew, I'm getting more excited, but I just want a good movie at the end of the day. Like,
Yeah.
again, like my movie going ways have changed over the past couple of years. Like I generally don't get excited for movies anymore. Not to say that I don't get excited. I just mean like, because I don't want to be disappointed. If the film's good, I get hell of a hyped when I get and walk out of the theater.
Mm.
I don't want to walk in and have like all these unrealistic expectations and then be disappointed that I didn't live up to those things.
Yeah.
So if I go in and No Time to Die is like the best Bond film ever made, great. If it's not, it'll still be good at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because the great thing about Bond is it's still an event. These films are still extremely rare to see.
Yeah.
One doesn't come out like every 2 years. It's like almost every 5, 10 years almost, it seems sometimes.
Yeah. The gap.
That's why I get excited. Yeah.
The gap in between, the release window in between, has almost gotten more and more as years have went on.
Yeah.
Accidentally, I may add, but still the gap is there.
I think it's important to say that whenever a film is delayed and delayed and delayed, it's almost, in some cases anyway, it's almost setting itself up for a fall, because the more a film or the more a TV show is delayed, the more our expectations, or the more fans' expectations, will increase and grow, and they'll fester, and they'll start to want it more and more. And the more they want it, the more their expectations will become, in some cases, unrealistic. So I'm going to go into it with measured expectations and hopefully be blown away by it. But if I go in with moderate expectations, then hopefully I won't be disappointed. But I've heard initial reviews are favorable, so that's always a good sign.
The conversation seems to be online that this movie is going to save cinema, much like Christopher Nolan's Tenet. I hope that's not really the thing. Like that's such a huge pressure for a film to do.
Yeah,
I know cinemas are struggling this now, but I mean, a Bond, if anything, I think Bond could bring a lot more people back in and to support cinemas again, because we don't want them to close.
No, well, I mean, cinemas and the longevity and the future of cinemas is definitely a topic for another episode, because that we could speak about that for ages, and we'll definitely get you on for that episode, Daniel. But just briefly, I will say that the cinema experience cannot be replicated, regardless of how we feel about, and regardless of the convenience of streaming services and Netflix, Disney Plus, Now TV. Nothing, in my opinion, unless you're a millionaire and you can have your own cinema room, nothing can replicate the feeling of going along, getting your tickets, getting your snacks, going in and watching the trailers and the surround sound, the massive screen. I don't think anything can replicate that.
Absolutely.
But as I say, that is definitely a topic for another episode. But guys, we've covered a lot of ground, as I say. We've went on our own mission. We've talked about James Bond. We've talked about the Bond franchise. We've touched on the new film, touched upon the previous films. Very, very quickly, let's wrap this up by saying no explanation. Andrew, Daniel, and then I'll suggest one as well. I want you to suggest an actor, because it's not been confirmed who's going to replace Daniel Craig. I want you to suggest who could replace Daniel Craig as Bond.
Well, for me, I guess I can't really give an answer yet, and that's because I don't know.
Don't be boring, Andrew.
No. But I'm saying that with No Time to Die, we don't know the direction it's going to take Bond. If it's going to be a definitive ending, and then the next movie it's new continuity, new everything, or if it's just going to be Daniel Craig's not Bond, it's someone new, but Ray Fiennes is still there, Naomi Harris is still there, so on and so forth. Michael Fassbender would be really damn good.
I
can see it, yeah, fair enough. And Daniel?
Henry Cavill, because to me, when I watched The Man from U.N.C.L.E., that was his Bond edition tape.
Yeah,
much.
That's X-Men First Class with Michael Fassbender for me.
Yeah. Well, very quickly, I know it's incredibly unrealistic because the actor's probably, well, I might be wrong, might be unfair me to say this, but the actor's probably too old for it now. But I would have said Cillian Murphy. he's an unusual choice, but I thought he would have been quite a good Bond, in my opinion, or maybe a
Yeah.
Bond villain. But I would have liked to have seen him in Bond.
A Bond villain, I would love to see him as a Bond villain. He would be
Yeah.
really sinister.
Yeah.
Anyway, folks, viewers, listeners, thank you very much for joining us in this Bond special. Let us know what you think of the new No Time to Die. Do you think it's been worth the wait? Yes, no, you'll have to let us know. Daniel, it's been fantastic having you on as a guest. We're going to have you back
Thank you
on
for having
again.
me.
We're going to have you back on again. And you know what? When I get you on again, I'm going to have you whacked because we're going to be talking about Sopranos.
Oh, God.
Well, thank you guys. And thank you for listening, folks. And take care.